Chief Secretary Eric Chan says cross-border restrictions will be further relaxed. Lunar New Year traditions return to the city. Residents in Beijing celebrate the new year with fewer curbs. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Today is the first day of the Lunar New Year. From all of us at TVB Pearl News, we wish you all a happy Year of the Rabbit. The recent reopening of the mainland border has not triggered a surge in COVID infections. As such, the government has set its sights on further easing testing requirements and expanding travel quotas in the hope of a full reopening with the mainland. Jackie Lin with more.
Ushering in the Year of the Rabbit, Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan attended a well-wishing festival, praying for good fortune and prosperity for the city. To achieve that, Chan said one way is through reopening the border with the mainland. With that in mind, Eric Chan, a former director of immigration, along with Secretary for Security Chris Tang and current Director of Immigration Ao Ka Wang, visited the border checkpoint in Lok Ma Chau. They thanked frontline staff for holding fast to their duties during the public holidays. Over the past few days, more than 100,000 travelers from Hong Kong headed up north for the Spring Festival. The number of mainland travelers visiting Hong Kong, meanwhile, recorded a dip. The Chief Secretary said as infections did not surge after the border reopening, Hong Kong is now in a position to move closer to normal travel with the mainland. Discussions are underway with mainland authorities to abolish the PCR test requirements or replace it with rapid antigen tests. That's to address concerns over long queues and waiting times at most testing centers in Hong Kong. Another goal, to scrap the cap on the number of daily land crossings.
So our target is to cancel this arrangement, and eventually then the quota-free and also the no need to do any testing before going to mainland China or mainland China coming to Hong Kong. This is our ultimate target.
As to when the mask mandates could end, Eric Chan said the government has no timetable yet on that because the face covering is the most effective way to prevent cross-infection. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Hong Kong today reported 2,676 new COVID-19 infections, of which 61 cases were imported. 13 more patients were confirmed to have died from COVID. And after being canceled for 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Well-Wishing Festival in Tai Po made its comeback this year. In celebration of the Year of the Rabbit, today large crowds made their pilgrimage to the festival's popular wishing tree, where many asked for a swift end to the pandemic and a return to normalcy. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Flashes of orange zipping across the air. That was the common sight at Tai Po's Lam Chun village this morning, where visitors participated in a local Lunar New Year custom of throwing their wishes at the wishing tree. Because of the coronavirus, the annual Well-Wishing Festival was cancelled for the past 2 years. Its return today was welcomed by many, including this tourist family from Japan.
My kids really excited to throwing the tangerine. Yeah, it's our first time to come here. In Japan, we just celebrate a New Year. We don't have Chinese New Year's celebration.
I wish for mainly good health. I've been having some headaches recently, so I'm hoping that they disappear. And also good luck for my family. I came to the wishing tree a few weeks ago when it was under renovation, so I wasn't able to do anything then. So I've been looking forward to this since then.
Among the Wishing Tree's visitors today was Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan, who was happy to join in the fun. And at the Well-Wishing Square, visitors could purchase items including Lunar New Year lanterns as well as love padlocks. Food stalls were also available. The Well-Wishing Festival will remain open until February 5th.
Even in a modern city like Hong Kong, there are still Lunar New Year traditions. Here in Lam Chun, visitors can write their wishes on a piece of paper tied to a tangerine before casting it towards the wishing tree. According to legend, people's wishes will be granted if their tangerines successfully hang on one of the branches. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
This is the first Lunar New Year after Hong Kong scrapped most of its COVID restrictions, and the city was a happy place as many residents put on festive clothing to celebrate. Mimosa Ngai tells us more.
This New Year's Day, many people could be seen on the streets dressed in bright, vibrant colors such as red and purple. Some children also wore traditional Chinese clothing, also known as tan suit. People were also walking around carrying food in bags, which would later be gifted as holiday presents. This man said his family came all the way back to Hong Kong from the United States to spend the New Year in the city.
We've been back here before just for vacation, but this time we made an effort to come for the New Year, just to see the celebration. And just the other day we went to Wong Tai Sin. Yeah, we don't have that back in the U.S., so yeah, so that was kind of cool.
Many people are making the most of the public holiday.
My plan for today is just want to meet my friend here because we don't have to meet a long time. I received it already. So happy, and I say like sending Philok Sunday Kin Hong.
Happy New Year! Today is the first day of the Year of the Rabbit. With the lifting of most of the social distancing measures, residents are now freer to meet with family and friends, while some shops and restaurants remain open to offer services on this New Year's Day. Some people chose to celebrate the festival in a traditional way. In the New Territories, residents kicked off the New Year with the sound of firecrackers. Meanwhile, United Hospital welcomed a baby who scrambled to become a rabbit. This baby boy was born just after midnight and weighed 2.94 kilograms. The first rabbit girl was born at the Baptist Hospital at just before 1 a.m. Mimosa Ngai, TVB News.
In Macau, the Golden Dragon Parade as well as the Dragon and Lion Dance performances got underway, sending blessings to residents and tourists. The Golden Dragon Parade was held at the ruins of St. Paul's. Some people dressed up as the gods of wealth, good fortune, and long life. This year's protagonist, Rabbit, and Macau's tourism mascot, Mac Mac, were also present to celebrate the new year. The hotel occupancy rate in Macau has exceeded 90%. And in Beijing, many people rang in the New Year of the Rabbit with large family gatherings and crowds visiting temples. It is the biggest festive celebration for the nation since the pandemic began some 3 years ago. Continuing the first incense tradition, worshippers flocked to Yonghe Temple, also known as Lama Temple, this morning. Many prayed for good fortune for the new year. Also bustling with crowds was Ditan Park, which houses the Temple of the Earth. The popular temple fair there was suspended for 3 years due to COVID and is back this year. Some visitors there said it's much more convenient to be out and about now because there is no need to scan the health code. And many countries around the world also took part in the Lunar New Year celebrations. From Russia to Australia, locals were treated to New Year festivities such as the Lion Dance. Timothy Lee reports.
In Moscow, hundreds of people were packed outside an exhibition center on Saturday, their eyes all glued to the traditional lion dance, which welcomed the new year. With Russia and China having relatively cordial diplomatic relations, many Russians have shown their admiration for Chinese culture and have expressed interest in many of the unique Chinese performances. In Sydney's Chinatown, Lunar New Year celebrations were joined by China's Consul General in Sydney, Zhou Limin, and Lord Mayor of Sydney, Clover Moore. Sydney's New Year celebration was the largest of its kind outside of Asia, which began on Saturday and will last until the 5th of next month.
It feels great. It feels like the city is back to normal, lively again, just like pre-COVID, and this is how it's supposed to be for Chinatown.
Some shopkeepers in Chinatown believe that they can finally celebrate a relaxing new year, stressing that the Lunar New Year is important not only to the Chinese, but also to other Asians such as the Vietnamese and Indonesians. Meanwhile, several Chinese residents in the city said they remain concerned about the COVID situation back home, opting to celebrate with their families via video call. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Welcome back. In Peru, civil unrest continues to ravage cities and towns, with thousands of protesters demanding the resignation of President Pedro Castillo. Peruvian police also stormed the San Marcos University in the capital Lima and detained dozens of protesters. Even the famous Machu Picchu ruins in the Andes was closed down, trapping more than 400 tourists. Nazvi Karim has more.
Thousands of people marching in the city of Cusco in the Peruvian Andes, known as a gateway to the country's most famous historical site and tourism hotspot, the Machu Picchu Citadel. On Saturday, Peruvian authorities closed the 15th century ruins and the Inca trail leading up to it indefinitely because of political protests that have reached a peak after steadily gathering steam over the past month. To shut down a world-famous tourist attraction more than 2,400 meters above sea level highlights the fact that the unrest, which has resulted in at least 55 deaths, has pretty much engulfed the whole country. Peru's tourism minister, Luis Fernando Elguero, said at least 417 people were stranded at Machu Picchu, more than 300 of them foreigners. The upheaval was previously focused in the country's south, but escalated last month after President Pedro Castillo, Peru's first leader with a rural Andean background, was impeached and imprisoned after he tried to dissolve Congress. The protesters are demanding new general elections, the resignation of President Dina Boluarte, who replaced Castillo, and some members of parliament. On Saturday morning, Peruvian police entered the most important state university, San Marcos, in Lima to evict protesters from the property. Hundreds gathered outside the law enforcement offices where the detainees were being held, chanting freedom and we're students, not terrorists. They have entered with tear gas bombs. They assaulted people, said this protester. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights expressed concern over the police incursion, eviction and mass detentions at the university and urged the state to guarantee the integrity and due process of all people. The university said the police raid took place after protesters assaulted security personnel. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
In Turkey, protesters gathered outside Swedish diplomatic offices in Istanbul and Ankara after a far-right activist burned a copy of the Quran. In Istanbul, protesters gathered outside the Swedish consulate and set fire to its flag. Rasmus Paludan, a far-right activist from Denmark, burned a copy of Islam's religious book in front of the Turkish embassy in Stockholm, having been given permission by the Swedish police to stage the act. Turkey canceled a planned visit by Sweden's defense minister because of the protests. Sweden is eager to join the NATO military alliance amid Russian aggression in Ukraine, but needs Turkey's approval. Swedish officials say freedom of expression is guaranteed by their constitution, although incitement to violence or hate speech isn't allowed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has attended a funeral service for the victims of a helicopter crash on the outskirts of Kyiv earlier this week. Daniel Rao tells us more.
During his nightly address on Saturday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky honored the memory of people killed in a helicopter crash on Wednesday. Former Ukrainian Interior Minister Denis Monastyrsky, his deputy and 5 senior officials were killed when their French-made Super Puma helicopter plummeted amid fog into a nursery. Monastyrsky, who oversaw the country's police and emergency services, was the most senior official killed since Russia invaded Ukraine. Another 7 people were killed, including 1 child, in the crash. Earlier on Saturday, Zelensky attended a funeral for the victims of the helicopter crash. Zelensky and his wife Olena Zelenska laid flowers on each of the coffins draped in the blue and yellow flags of Ukraine. They also spoke to the family members of the victims of the crash. Elsewhere, Russian state-owned Sberbank said it had installed its first ATMs in Crimea, the peninsula Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014, and would open branches there during the first half of 2023. Russia's largest companies had previously refused to operate in Crimea for fear of falling under Western sanctions. However, the West sanctioned Sberbank last year in response to Russia sending tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine, paving the way for the bank to potentially start working in Crimea. Sberbank is one of several big Russian banks to have been blocked from the international SWIFT payments system, and some senior executives have been personally hit by sanctions. The bank has been forced to shut down some international operations, including almost all its European markets, in the wake of sanctions.
Chris Hipkins has been confirmed as New Zealand's next Prime Minister after he was the only candidate entering the contest to replace Jacinda Ardern. Matthew Bray reports.
New Zealand's ruling Labour Party confirmed Chris Hipkins as its leader Sunday at a party caucus meeting. The 44-year-old will be sworn in as Prime Minister on Wednesday.
This is the biggest privilege and the biggest responsibility of my life. I am energised and excited by the challenge that lies ahead. New Zealand is the greatest little country in the world, and I have dedicated my working life to the service of our people and to making it even better.
Hipkins said that he would not be taking on the same approach as his predecessor, Jacinda Ardern, but would be getting back to basics, as he put it.
Look, I think you'll see that there'll be a balance of stability, a balance of drawing on the experience that we have at the moment. We've got some ministers who, as I said, have been through the fire. They've really been forged by that experience, and I want to draw on that. But also there is an opportunity for some renewal, to bring forward some of the amazing talent that we have.
Reactions to Hipkins taking over from Ardern were mixed.
Has he been a good MP for your area?
No. I can remember once he came into our work, didn't want anything to do with the workers, so no, sorry. He's only more interested in the top people.
Well, through the COVID pandemic, I think he manages the media really very well. You know, his responses are, really good. And he's shown that he's able to manage different portfolios.
Hipkins named Carmel Sepuloni as Deputy Prime Minister. Like him, entered politics 15 years ago and is of Samoan and Tongan and New Zealand European descent. Hipkins faces a challenging election in October, but as he is more centrist than Ardern, he may roll back some of her unpopular policies and regain the centre ground. The opposition leader, Christopher Luxon, had this to say on Hipkins' elevation.
Chris Hipkins has been part of a government that has spectacularly failed to get anything done. And what New Zealanders really need is a national government that will get things done. And that means a government that's going to be focused on them and single-mindedly focus on reducing the cost of living, making sure we can raise incomes for all.
Matthew Bray, TVB News.
Buckingham Palace has announced details about the upcoming coronation of Britain's King Charles III this May. The palace said the formal ceremony will take place at London's Westminster Abbey on May 6th and will follow the traditional pageantry used for anointing monarchs over the last 1,000 years. The King and Queen consort Camilla will appear on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, accompanied by members of the royal family. Windsor Castle will host a coronation concert on Sunday, May 7, which will feature a special coronation choir with people from diverse backgrounds. And back locally, the budget will be out next month. Financial Secretary Paul Chan revealed the government is still considering whether to issue another round of the consumption voucher scheme. This as the finance chief visited elderly residents living alone and some ethnic minority residents on the New Year Day at a housing estate in Tuen Mun. Speaking on a radio program, Chan said they're collecting different views on the consumption vouchers. He said some political parties advised against a fresh round of handouts in closed-door consultations, worrying that it could cause too much pressure on the public coffers. Chan noted a budget deficit surpassing some $100 billion is inevitable in this fiscal year. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Kung Hei Fat Choi, wishing everybody good health, happiness, and prosperity. Bye for now.